Did you know a fragile boy, unknown to the world, quietly chose holiness with a courage that many adults never dare to live each day? In school, in friendship, and in silent prayer, Dominic discovered that sainthood is not distant, but hidden within small and faithful choices every single day. He chose God over sin, joy over fear, proving that even the smallest life, lived fully for God, can become a light for the whole world. This is the story of Saint Dominic Savio. Chapter 1. The world he was born into and his early childhood. In 19th century Italy, life in the countryside was often marked by poverty and hardship. Yet the Catholic faith remained deeply alive in the hearts of the people. Small villages were centered around the church, where prayer shaped daily life. It was in this humble but faith-filled environment that God prepared many souls for holiness, quietly planting seeds of grace in ordinary families like that of young Dominic Savio. Dominic Savio was born on the 2nd of April 1842 in the small village of Riva, near Chieri, in the region of Piedmont. It was a quiet, rural place, far from the noise of great cities, where life moved simply and closely with nature. From the very beginning, his life was hidden and ordinary, yet destined for something extraordinary in the eyes of God and the Church. His family lived a modest life of labor and perseverance. His father was a blacksmith, working long hours with his hands, while his mother supported the household through sewing. Together, they raised many children with love and sacrifice. Though they had little in material wealth, their home was rich in faith, discipline, and mutual care, creating a nurturing environment for Dominic's growth. Dominic's parents were not only hardworking, but deeply faithful. They took seriously their responsibility to pass on the Catholic faith to their children. Prayer was part of daily life, and trust in God guided their decisions. From a very young age, Dominic absorbed these values naturally, learning not only through words, but through the quiet, consistent witness of his parents' lives. Even as a small child, Dominic showed signs of unusual spiritual maturity. He learned to pray early and did so willingly, without needing reminders. He was obedient, gentle, and attentive to others. His behavior was not forced or rigid, but flowed from a sincere heart. Those around him began to notice that his goodness seemed to come from something deeper than simple discipline. He often accompanied his mother to church, where he displayed a remarkable sense of reverence. Whether attending Mass or waiting quietly in prayer, Dominic treated the sacred space with deep respect. Even as a child, he seemed aware that he was in the presence of God. This love for the Eucharist and the liturgy would become a defining mark of his spiritual life. These early years quietly shaped Dominic's soul in profound ways. Surrounded by faith, guided by loving parents, and drawn naturally toward prayer, he developed a heart that sought God above all else. Nothing extraordinary seemed to happen outwardly, yet within him a pure and generous love was growing, one that would, in time, lead him along a path of remarkable holiness. Chapter 2. Early Signs of Holiness. From a very young age, Dominic began to develop a habit of personal prayer that went beyond simply following his family. While other children might pray only when told, he often sought quiet moments on his own to speak with God. These simple, hidden conversations revealed a heart already attentive to grace, forming a relationship with the Lord that was both sincere and deeply personal. His spiritual life was not occasional or dependent on emotion, but steady and disciplined. Dominic kept a regular rhythm of prayer each day, treating it not as a burden but as something natural and necessary. This quiet consistency gave structure to his inner life. Even in small things, he showed a remarkable fidelity, proving that holiness often begins in the faithful repetition of simple acts. One striking feature of Dominic's character was his clear sense of right and wrong. Even as a child, he could recognize what pleased God and what did not. This moral clarity did not make him harsh or judgmental, but rather guided his choices with gentleness and conviction. He understood that every action mattered, and that even small decisions could lead him closer to or further from God. Because of this awareness, Dominic carefully avoided anything he believed might offend God. He did not wait for others to correct him, but took responsibility for his own actions. Whether in speech, behavior, or thought, he tried to remain pure. This vigilance was not driven by fear, but by love, a desire not to hurt the one he had already begun to love deeply. His love for the Eucharist grew steadily during these years. Dominic was drawn to the presence of Jesus in the Blessed Sacrament and often lingered in church even after others had left. There, in silence, he found peace and joy. These moments of quiet adoration were not extraordinary outwardly, but they nourished a profound interior life that would shape everything he became. Unlike many children his age, Dominic was not easily influenced by the careless behavior of others. When his companions engaged in games or conversations that were improper, he chose a different path. He did not isolate himself, but he remained firm in his values. His example quietly challenged others, showing that it was possible to be both joyful and faithful without compromising one's conscience. What made Dominic's holiness so remarkable was its simplicity. His virtues did not appear forced or exaggerated. They grew naturally from a heart open to God. There was no desire to impress or stand out. Instead, his goodness was steady, humble, and deeply rooted. Even in these early years, it was clear that grace was at work, forming in him a soul both gentle and strong. Chapter 3. First Holy Communion, a spiritual turning point. At a time when most children received their first Holy Communion much later, Dominic was granted permission at the young age of 7. This was not given lightly, but because those around him recognized his unusual understanding of the faith. Even at such a tender age, he already showed a deep reverence for the Eucharist, as if his heart had long been prepared for this sacred encounter. In the days leading up to this moment, Dominic did not treat it as a simple ceremony. He prepared himself with earnest prayer, careful study of the catechism, and sincere examination of conscience. He wanted to receive Jesus with a pure and attentive heart. His preparation was marked not by fear, but by love, a desire to welcome the Lord as worthily as he could. On the eve of his first communion, Dominic did something deeply touching. He went to his mother and asked for forgiveness for anything he might have done to hurt or displease her. It was a simple act, yet filled with spiritual depth. He understood that receiving Christ meant coming with a clean heart, not only before God, but also in his relationships with others. Dominic also wrote down a series of personal resolutions, treating them as a solemn promise offered to God. These were not passing thoughts, but commitments he intended to live by. He kept them close and returned to them often, allowing them to guide his actions. In doing so, he showed a maturity beyond his years, a child already forming a conscious path toward holiness. Among these resolutions, one stood out with striking clarity: death rather than sin. This was not an expression of exaggeration, but a genuine conviction. Dominic understood that sin separated him from the God he loved, and he chose, even at that age, to value grace above everything else. This decision would become the cornerstone of his spiritual life. He also made a conscious choice to take Jesus and Mary as his closest companions. For Dominic, faith was not abstract or distant. It was relational and alive. He saw in Christ a friend to follow, and in the Blessed Virgin a mother to trust. This sense of companionship gave warmth and direction to his spiritual journey, making his faith both intimate and personal. From that day forward, his first Holy Communion became the foundation of everything he lived. He would later recall it as the happiest day of his life. The grace he received that day continued to bear fruit in quiet ways, shaping his decisions, strengthening his virtues, and deepening his love. It was not an ending, but the true beginning of a life fully centered on God. Chapter 4. Student Life and Heroic Virtue. As a student, Dominic approached his studies with diligence and a strong sense of responsibility. He did not see schoolwork as a burden, but as a duty entrusted to him by God. Each lesson, each task, became an opportunity to grow in discipline and faithfulness. In the ordinary rhythm of school life, he quietly practiced virtue, showing that holiness can begin in the simple act of doing one's duty well. Every day, Dominic walked a long distance to and from school, often under difficult weather conditions, yet he rarely complained. Instead, he carried himself with a cheerful spirit, accepting these small hardships with patience. For him, even the tiring journey became a silent offering. His joy was not dependent on comfort, but rooted in a deeper awareness that every effort could be given to God. Among his peers, Dominic stood out, not because he separated himself, but because he remained firm in his values. When others were tempted to act wrongly, he gently but firmly refused to join them. He did not condemn or shame his companions, but simply chose the good. His quiet consistency became a witness, reminding others that integrity does not require harshness, but courage. On one occasion, he was falsely accused of wrongdoing by classmates who feared punishment. Though innocent, Dominic accepted the blame in silence. When later asked why he did not defend himself, he explained that he wished to spare the others from harsher consequences. In this, he imitated Christ, who remained silent before his accusers. It was a hidden act of charity, unnoticed by many, but precious in God's eyes. Dominic also showed remarkable courage in moments of conflict. When two boys prepared to fight, he placed himself between them, holding up a crucifix and inviting them to strike him instead. His unexpected action shocked them into reflection, and the fight was stopped. In that moment, he did not rely on strength, but on faith, using the symbol of Christ's love to restore peace. He was careful to guard not only his actions, but also his inner life. Dominic avoided anything that could stain his soul, whether harmful words, inappropriate images, or idle curiosity. This custody of the heart allowed him to remain pure in thought and intention. His vigilance was not rigid, but loving, as he desired to keep his soul a place where God could dwell freely. Through what seemed like an ordinary school life, Dominic revealed an extraordinary depth of virtue. He did not perform grand deeds, yet every choice reflected a heart formed by grace. In study, in friendship, and in quiet sacrifice, he lived with a maturity beyond his years. His example shows that even within the simple life of a student, one can walk a path of true holiness. Chapter 5. Meeting Don Bosco and the Path to Holiness. In 1854, a decisive moment unfolded in Dominic's young life when he met Don Bosco. From their first encounter, something in Dominic's heart resonated deeply. He did not approach Don Bosco with hesitation, but with a quiet confidence born of faith. In that meeting, he expressed a sincere desire to belong more fully to God, revealing a vocation already taking shape within him. Dominic shared openly that he wished to become a priest one day. This was not a passing dream, but a desire rooted in his love for God and his longing to serve others. Even at such a young age, he understood that priesthood meant offering one's life for souls. His aspiration reflected a heart already oriented towards sacrifice, generosity, and a deep sense of mission. Recognizing his sincerity, Don Bosco welcomed Dominic into the oratory in Turin. This place was more than a school. It was a home where education and spiritual formation went hand in hand. Surrounded by other boys and guided by caring mentors, Dominic entered an environment where faith was lived daily and where holiness was presented not as distant, but as possible and concrete. From the beginning, Dominic adapted quickly to this new life. He embraced the rhythm of study, prayer, and community with enthusiasm. Rather than feeling overwhelmed, he found joy in belonging. The structure of the oratory did not constrain him. Instead, it gave direction to his growing desire for holiness. He understood that discipline was not restriction, but a path toward freedom in God. One of Dominic's most notable qualities during this time was his obedience. He respected the rules and followed the guidance of his superiors with humility. This obedience was not mechanical, but thoughtful and loving. He trusted that those placed over him were guiding him toward what was good. In this way, he learned to surrender his own will, a key step in spiritual growth. Don Bosco soon became Dominic's spiritual guide, helping him understand what it truly meant to become a saint. Rather than encouraging extraordinary practices, he taught Dominic to remain joyful, to fulfill his daily duties, and to do good to others. This simple yet profound guidance shaped Dominic's path, grounding his spiritual life in balance, wisdom, and a deep sense of purpose. From this point on, Dominic's journey toward holiness became clearer and more concrete. Under Don Bosco's direction, his desire to love God took on a practical form in everyday life. He no longer wondered how to become a saint. He began to live it. Step by step, through ordinary actions and faithful choices, he walked a path that would quietly lead him to extraordinary holiness. Chapter 6. The Spiritual Path of Holiness in Small Things. As Dominic continued his journey at the oratory, he came to a strong and clear awareness. He was called to be a saint. This conviction did not arise from pride, but from a deep understanding that holiness was God's will for him. He believed that sanctity was not reserved for a few, but offered to all who loved God. This realization gave direction and purpose to every aspect of his young life. At first, Dominic tried to respond to this call with intense effort, even taking on forms of penance that were too harsh for his age. He would deprive himself of comfort, seeking to imitate the sacrifices of the saints he admired. Though his intentions were sincere, these practices began to affect his health. His zeal, while genuine, needed guidance to become balanced and truly fruitful. Seeing this, Don Bosco gently corrected him. He explained that holiness did not require extreme acts or extraordinary suffering. Instead, he taught Dominic that God desired fidelity in ordinary life. This guidance was transformative. Dominic began to understand that sanctity was not about doing great things in a dramatic way, but about doing simple things with great love and consistency. From then on, Dominic embraced a new path to fulfill his daily duties with care and love. Whether studying, praying, or helping others, he offered each action to God. He learned that holiness could be found in obedience, patience, and small sacrifices. This approach grounded his spiritual life, making it both accessible and deeply rooted in reality. Despite his strong interior life, Dominic did not withdraw from others. He remained joyful, friendly, and fully present among his companions. He played, laughed, and shared in daily activities, showing that holiness does not separate a person from others. Instead, it enriches relationships. His joy became a quiet testimony that living for God brings not heaviness, but true and lasting happiness. In everything he did, Dominic kept a simple intention: to offer it to God. Even the smallest actions, kind words, small tasks, moments of patience became meaningful when done out of love. This constant offering transformed his daily life into a living prayer. He did not wait for extraordinary opportunities. He made every moment an opportunity to love and serve God. In time, Dominic's way of living became a powerful example for others. His spirituality was simple, yet deeply profound. He showed that holiness is not distant or complicated, but close and attainable. By living faithfully in the present moment, with love and sincerity, he revealed a path that anyone could follow, a path where small things, done well, lead to great sanctity. Chapter 7. His Final Years and a Holy Death. As Dominic grew in virtue, his physical strength began to fade. While still very young, his health showed signs of weakness that could not be ignored. What seemed at first like a simple illness slowly became more serious. Yet even as his body weakened, his soul remained strong. There was no bitterness in him, only a quiet acceptance, as though he already sensed that his life would be short. Following the advice of doctors and those responsible for him, Dominic was asked to return home to recover. Though he deeply loved the oratory and wished to remain there, he accepted this decision with obedience. Leaving his companions was not easy, but he did not complain. Instead, he entrusted everything to God, showing that true love is ready to surrender even what is most dear. At home, his condition continued to worsen, but his spirit remained peaceful. Those around him noticed that he did not become anxious or discouraged. Rather, he carried himself with a calm that seemed beyond his years. His illness became a quiet offering, lived with patience and trust. In the midst of suffering, he revealed a deep interior union with God that nothing could disturb. Dominic understood that his life might soon come to an end, and he prepared his soul with great care. He received the sacraments with devotion, especially confession and Holy Communion. These were not mere rituals, but encounters he longed for. In them, he found strength, forgiveness, and peace. His preparation was not marked by fear, but by a loving desire to meet the Lord he had served. He also practiced what was known as a happy death, a devotion encouraged in his spiritual formation. This meant living each day as if it were the last, ready to stand before God. For Dominic, this was not something distant, but something real and present. He approached death not as an end, but as a meeting, an encounter with the one he had loved all his life. There was no fear in him as the final moments approached. Instead, there was faith, simple, steady, and full of hope. He trusted completely in God's mercy and goodness. Death, for him, was not darkness, but light. It was the fulfillment of everything he had believed in, the doorway to the eternal joy he had long desired, but could not yet fully see. Shortly before he died, Dominic spoke words that have been remembered ever since. "I am seeing such beautiful things." These were not the words of fear, but of wonder. In that moment, the veil between earth and heaven seemed to open. With a peaceful heart and a joyful spirit, he passed from this world, leaving behind a witness of faith that continues to inspire. Chapter 8. Canonization, Veneration, and Spiritual Legacy. After Dominic's death, his story did not fade into silence. Don Bosco, who had accompanied him so closely, felt compelled to preserve the memory of his young student. He wrote a detailed account of Dominic's life, not to glorify a child, but to show how grace can work in an ordinary soul. Through these pages, Dominic's quiet holiness began to reach far beyond his small world. As people read Don Bosco's account, many were deeply moved. They recognized in Dominic not just a good boy, but a life marked by authentic virtue. His simplicity, purity, and love for God resonated with readers of all ages. What made his story powerful was not extraordinary miracles, but the consistency of his daily faith. It became clear that his life bore the signs of true sanctity. Over time, this growing devotion led the Church to begin the formal process of canonization. Witnesses were consulted, writings examined, and his life carefully studied. The Church sought to discern whether Dominic had lived the virtues in a heroic way. This process, though thorough and patient, reflected a deeper truth, that even a short life, when fully given to God, can shine with lasting significance. In 1950, Dominic Savio was declared blessed, a recognition that his life offered a credible path to holiness. This moment affirmed what many already believed, that his example was not only admirable, but worthy of imitation. His beatification brought renewed attention to his story, especially among young people who saw in him a reflection of their own daily struggles and hopes. Just 4 years later, in 1954, he was canonized a saint by Pope Pius XII. With this declaration, the Church officially recognized that Dominic Savio now shared in the glory of heaven and could be venerated by the faithful. His life, once hidden in a small village and a simple school, was now held up as a universal example of holiness for the entire Church. Dominic became known as one of the youngest non-martyr saints in the history of the Church. His age, rather than being an obstacle, became a powerful sign. It showed that holiness is not measured by years, but by love. His witness challenged the common belief that sanctity is only for the old or the experienced, reminding the world that even the young are capable of great virtue. Today, Dominic Savio's legacy continues to speak with clarity and strength. He leaves behind a message that is both simple and profound, that holiness is possible in everyday life. For young people especially, his life offers hope and direction. He shows that one does not need to wait to become holy. By living faithfully, joyfully, and with love, anyone can begin the journey to sainthood. Chapter 9. A Prayer to Saint Dominic Savio. O Saint Dominic Savio, radiant model of youthful holiness, we come before you with humble hearts. Though your life was brief, it was filled with love, purity, and deep trust in God. You remind us that holiness is not far away, but possible in every stage of life. Intercede for us, that we may desire to live faithfully and courageously in God's grace each day. Help us, dear Saint Dominic, to love God with all our heart, mind, and strength. Teach us to place Him above all things, even in the small choices we make each day. May our love not remain only in words, but be shown through our actions. Guide us to seek Him in prayer, in silence, and in every moment of our lives. Teach us to avoid sin in every circumstance. You chose purity over comfort and never wished to offend God. Strengthen us in moments of temptation and remind us that nothing is worth losing His friendship. Help us to remain faithful and to choose what is right, even when it is difficult or unnoticed by others. Grant us the grace to love the sacraments as you did. May we approach confession and the Holy Eucharist with devotion and sincerity. Help us to prepare our hearts well and to receive these sacred gifts with gratitude. Through them, may we grow closer to Jesus and be renewed in His grace day by day. Inspire us to live with joy and purity. You showed that holiness is not sadness, but a deep and lasting happiness in God. Help us to remain cheerful in trials, kind in our words, and pure in our thoughts. May our lives reflect the beauty of a soul that seeks to belong entirely to the Lord. Teach us to be faithful in our daily duties, whether in study, work, or relationships. Help us to do everything with love and care. Like you, may we find holiness in small things and offer each effort to God. Form in us a heart that is faithful, patient, and attentive in all responsibilities. Saint Dominic Savio, pray for us before the throne of God. Lead us closer to Jesus and Mary and help us to persevere in grace until the end of our lives. May we one day share in the joy you now behold, living forever in the presence of God. Amen.